Okay, our next speaker is Sara Bowman. Sara is a project manager at the Center for Open Science. Her primary focus is growing and connecting communities of researchers, editors, and publishers interested in increasing the transparency of scientific research. At COS, she is heavily involved in projects to shift incentives towards greater transparency, including the Transparency and Openness Promotion, the TOP guidelines, badges to acknowledge open practices, and the registered reports format of publishing. Sara has a BS in Chemical Engineering from Lafayette College and a PhD in Chemical Engineering from the University of Virginia.
Thank you. So I'm Sara Bowman. I'm here to talk to you today about registered reports, the registered reports format of publishing. I work for the Center for Open Science. We're a nonprofit tech company with a mission of improving the openness, integrity, and reproducibility of scientific research. And one of the ways that we are trying to do that is through realigning incentives and realigning norms and practices in scientific research. And so when I talk about realigning norms and practices, I always like to talk about Merton's norms of science and compare them to some of the counter norms of science. So norms of science might be communality, open sharing, universalism, evaluating research on its own merit, as opposed to particularism, which would be evaluate research by the reputation of the researcher doing it. Disinterestedness. As a researcher, I'm motivated by knowledge and discovery rather than treating science as a competition and interested in what project is going to further my career. And then organized skepticism, considering all evidence, even if it goes against work that I've done in the past, as opposed to organized dogmatism, investing in my own career and my own advancement. And then finally, the last one is quality, which was not one of the original norms Merton laid out, but quality of science, quality of the research over quantity, how many papers can I get out? So there's a great survey in 2007 of NIH-funded researchers who were all presented with these norms and counter norms of science, and they were asked, which ones do you believe in more? Do you believe in the norms? Do you believe in the counter norms? And so the light gray bar shows the percentage of those surveyed who said, I believe in the norms of science. And then the striped bars indicate those researchers who said, I believe in the norms and counter norms equally. And then the dark bar is those who said, no, I believe in the counter norms. Beliefs are great. The next question was, what do you actually do? What are your behaviors? And things started to get a little more real. People said, not as many people seem to actually practice the norms. So definitely more folks saying norms and counter norms equally, and a few more saying the counter norms exclusively. So enough about themselves. Then they were asked, what do your peers do? So if anybody can guess what this might look like. Yeah. So this is what we talk about when we talk about realigning kind of norms and practices and what you're doing and what your peers are doing. And how we think about that is shifting incentives. So the current incentive structure is set up so that individual success is focused on getting it published, not necessarily getting it right. If I'm a researcher and I want to get tenure, I want to get published. I want to get published in the highest impact journal possible. I want to get grant funding that I'm going to get because I've published in these high impact journals. And not so much on getting it right. So what do I do if I want to get it published in a high impact journal? First of all, I need to have a positive result. Daniel Finelli showed this really well. Across almost all fields, the percentage of papers supporting the tested hypothesis is over 70%. So the positive results get into the literature, the negative results don't. This can cause a variety of problems. One is the file drawer effect. So you get a negative result, and it's not worth your time to write it up because you know it's not going to get published, and if it does, it's not going to be in a high-impact journal, so why spend that time? That's one issue. Another issue is that then false positives are more likely to end up in the literature. So as a researcher, I'm incentivized to have a positive finding that I can get published. I'm also incentivized to have the most beautiful finding I can. I want it to be so pretty that everyone wants to publish it. And so that can lead to some questionable research practices. And we're not talking about fraud. We're talking about people making, what they feel are honest decisions to remove outliers or make their data as pretty as possible. So this is how science should work, right? The circle. You generate and specify a hypothesis, you design your study, collect your data, analyze your data, interpret it, write it up, and then use that again to start the whole cycle over. But there are lots of ways that this can kind of get short-circuited, right? One of those is down at the bottom. It's p-hacking. It's everyone's favorite. I'm going to adjust my data so I get my statistically significant p-value. Harking is another good one, hypothesizing after results are known. I totally thought that was going to happen. Lack of data sharing, publication bias, all of these things. And again, we're not talking about fraud. We're talking about just researchers making decisions every day that they might not even understand how much they impact their results. So these are the problems, right? Flexibility in analysis, I can throw out that outlier, that's fine. Selective reporting, I'm going to tell you about the things that match my hypothesis. I'm going to tell you about the things that look beautiful. I'm going to leave this part out because it doesn't look so beautiful. Ignoring nulls, null results don't get published. And then lack of replication. I'm not incentivized to replicate other people's work as well because, again, that doesn't get published in a high impact journal. It's too much time and effort. And so that means that those false positives that get into the literature persist in the literature because no one's trying to repeat them. So these are some problems and that we're trying to tackle. And one of those ways, it didn't look like that on my computer. Travis showed this basically earlier, right? So this is how science works in essence. You design your study and then you publish it at the end and your peer review occurs here right before you publish it. And in a lot of cases, this is just too late. So what we're looking at doing with registered reports is moving that peer review up to after the design phase. So you've laid out what you're going to do, why it's important. You've laid out your design methodology, you've laid out your analysis plan, and then you submit that for peer review. And the peer reviewers look at it and determine, is the methodology sound? Is this an important research question? And then based on the peer review here, the researcher is granted in-principle acceptance, which means that as long as they've carried out the study in the way that they say they're going to carry out the study, they'll get published, even if it's a negative result. Now, along the way, they might come across something interesting that they also want to get published, but it wasn't in their original plan. That's fine. It just needs to be distinguished as, this is something that we came across. This wasn't part of the original plan. So there are a lot of managing editors in the audience saying that sounds terrible. But here's how they do it. There's a two-stage review process, right? So stage one, researcher submits an introduction, methods, proposed analyses, and pilot data maybe, because they've probably done something to indicate that this is a good line of research. And then it would go through a peer review process that reviewers could send it back and say, I think your design is flawed, you should do this, something like that. It could get rejected. Or it could be accepted. If it's accepted, then the author will go on and conduct the study. When they're done, they'll submit it back again for stage 2 review, which is not reviewing that, the soundness of the methodology and all that. They're reviewing to say, did you say what you were going to do, and does this all kind of line up? And then the manuscript would be published. So the first journal that we know of that was doing this is the journal Cortex. Chris Chambers is a neuroscientist out of Cardiff. He is the biggest champion of this format of publishing. And so he's an associate editor at Cortex. They've been doing this since 2013 is when they announced it. And then recently Royal Society Open Science has also started publishing registered reports. This is really a community-driven initiative. Chris Chambers is the champion of this. He has put together a whole committee of folks, and all their names are up here, too small for you to see. But these are all journal editors and people involved in publishing who love this format of publishing. They think it's a great option. They've put together incredible resources on this website to show other editors how they might implement this in their journals, to show authors how they might submit a proposal for one of these formats. who publishes registered reports. There are 21 journals now publishing registered reports. These are just some. Most of them are in the social and behavioral sciences, eLife being the notable exception on here. So you can see the full list at that website, and then also a comparison of the various features and how these folks implement. So eLife is an open access publisher. They are teaming up with Center for Open Science and Science Exchange to publish the results of the Reproducibility Project in Cancer Biology, which is a massive effort to replicate 50 important findings in the cancer biology literature. And every one of these studies is being published as a registered report in eLife. And what's interesting about this is that eLife is actually publishing the study plan as a separate publication. So they've published the study plan as soon as it's done being peer reviewed, and they'll publish that, and now they're waiting for the labs to collect all the data, and then they'll publish the result as a separate publication. Some journals are doing this as a special issue. So Comparative Political Studies has a special issue only of registered reports, trying it out, see how it works, see how the community responds to it. And some journals are doing this as a way to publish replications. One is Perspectives on Psychological Science. They're doing registered replication reports. This is super interesting because they're actually like crowdsourced efforts. So someone puts together this proposal, and then it gets peer reviewed, and they come up with this format, methodology, and everything, and then anybody who's in that community who wants to get involved can run the study in their lab, and that way they have this massive amount of data for each of these replication reports. So that's really interesting. If you've heard of the top guidelines, transparency and openness promotion guidelines, this is actually using registered reports for replications is level 3 in top. So that's great. These are some of the other journals that are doing this. There is one journal that is actually publishing only registered reports. It's the only article format they publish, and I embarrassingly can't remember which one it is. It's a psychology journal. So you're all staring at me like, no one is ready to do this. My authors don't want to do this. My reviewers are going to lose their shit. It's just not going to be good. But it's okay, because as I said before, it's a community-driven effort. There's a whole community of folks who've put all of these resources together. There are templates of reviewer instructions, templates of author instructions, how to work this into your like workflow, your existing editorial manager, Scholar One, whatever you're using. Chris Chambers has already figured that out, and he and all the other editors would love to work with you to figure out how to get this going for you. There's another way, I think, to introduce this as an incremental step. The concept of pre-registering research, maybe not as adopting registered report format, but just introducing authors to the concept of pre-registration. So think about clinical trials, but for any type of research, not just clinical research. So you're just gonna state somewhere what your plan is. What are you gonna do? And we're big champions of this. We think it kind of limits some of those questionable research practices that folks make. And it also can help with the file drawer problem. There's a record out there that someone has tried this, and maybe they didn't end up publishing the result, but the fact that someone tried to do this is somewhere for you to find. So we're big fans of pre-registration. We have a grant to try to incentivize pre-registration in researchers, so we're giving away $1 million. It's $1,000 awards to researchers who pre-register their work and then get it published in a journal. So you can learn, oh, I didn't put the URL there. If you Google it, it will come up. We're really excited about this. We love to partner with journals to try to promote this to authors. We think it's just enough of an incentive to get folks over that barrier of this is scary. Another service that we, the Center for Open Science, offer is free stats and methods consulting. So if you have authors who maybe want to do this but just have no idea how to approach it, we have 2 folks on staff who will help with that. That is their full-time job. We have a grant to support them. The mission is educating the researchers in more reproducible and open practices. So what can you do? Partner with us on incentives to help realign values and practices. Happy to talk with you more about how we can do that. Meet researchers where they are and help them find immediate benefit in training. If you have researchers who are concerned about these issues, send them to us. We're happy to talk to them and introduce them to other folks in the community that are also doing this kind of great work. And you can find my presentation on the Open Science Framework.